Great.
Are we recording? Yeah, just started.
Okay. Yeah. Thanks. I just All right, we're going to start just a few minutes early. Drivers, catch up. So thank you all for coming out today. Studio's 3026. Really happy to have Peter Frank here, who curated our Under One Roof show. So for those of you who don't know, for those that you do, we'll give you a little reminder. Peter Frank is a New York-born, Los Angeles-based art critic and curator and historian. He's guest curated exhibitions at the Guggenheim Museum, the Center for Inter-American Relations, the Alternative Museum, Franklin Furnace Archive, and the Fort Wayne Museums of Art, among many others. I'm not as good at reading through my phone as I thought I was. That's why I said, can you do it? Because I'm like, I don't think I can read that. I'm doing this for Andy. Peter has written extensively for Art in America, Art News, Artillery, and White Hot Magazine and other periodicals, including several he edited, and served as art critic for the Soho Weekly News, the Village Voice, and LA Weekly. Numerous exhibition monographs and catalogs feature his essays, and he has published several books. He's lectured and taught at universities domestically and abroad. Peter is also a published poet. So one more round of applause. Yay. Thank you so much, Paul. And Andy is a past museum administrator, curator, and overall advocate for the arts, artists, creative communities. She and Peter worked together at the Riverside Art Museum and have known each other for a very long time. And from here, I'm going to turn it over to you.
First, before we start, you couldn't have missed the fact that a few minutes ago I didn't have a hat on. Just going on the all out for somebody running in Beverly Hills for City Council, Andi. If any of you live in Beverly Hills, vote in Beverly Hills.
There's the pitch.
His son is a really good artist.
I'm going to encourage you to talk as loud as you can, Peter.
Okay.
What I normally don't say in this building.
You can't? Okay.
Oh! There it is. That's perfect. There it is.
You just have to sit there and say, I am a howler monkey. and it works every time. Anyway, where were we?
I am not a howler monkey, but I can be that loud. So there's not really a format for this, so we're just going to kind of have a conversation. I'm going to anticipate some of the questions that you have as artists and kind of pose them those to Peter. Obviously, at some point, we'll probably have time for a few questions, but I think you all understand his background, and so I think all of you have, this is a lucky moment to be able to participate in an event that he's gone through and looked at your work and seriously considered it for this supporting aesthetically the thesis of this exhibition. But I think one of the things that most everyone here is wondering, when you look at the work, what makes you gravitate towards certain work? Is there something special about the work when you look at it that you go, oh, that has it?
More or less. I have to do a lot of forethinking about the work if given whatever parameters that pertain to the show. This one, it was in this space and adjoining spaces, and had to include good work, a decent representation of over 30 artists who fortunately were working under the same roof. And that took care of shipping. And made installation easier as well. But if I did not have to worry about what artists I was selecting, I still had to worry about what pieces I was selecting. And I always find that any sort of exhibition space with any sort of character is going to co-curate with me. I learned that when I curated for the Guggenheim. You try to put a show in there, you realize you're not the curator. Frank Lloyd Wright is. I was luckier this time. But still, this is not an easy space to display most things. Particularly, I notice a variegated group show like the one we have here. That was the fun part, but it was also the most difficult part. What to pick to fit, where to put it. Where to put it is so-and-so by so-and-so, or not in a good position for lighting. What does that narrow down the choices for that corner to be? I wasn't thinking in terms of decorating a space. I was thinking in terms of, I guess, wrapping like a Christmas present, wrapping a presentation. So it's not interior decorating, but there's an element of that in there.
Well, and the work itself becomes the objects in the room in the blank space, right? So
Yes.
there's a relationship between one piece to the next, and obviously two artists have very different work, and then there's a thought process to why that next to that.
Exactly. Well, that's why you get to play a lot of games.
Yeah.
Whether it's with color, or form, or subject matter, or style, touch. You know, all those things you could be playing across the room, next to each other, skipping. When I put together a group show, I usually try to keep the participating artists' work together, so that each artist colonizes a certain space in the space. And I tried to maintain that here, and I think more or less successfully. But that puts a little more pressure on what you're selecting in the first place, because the two or more pieces that you're choosing to adequately represent the artist have to talk to one another in order to make that representation adequate. Most of the artists here have work in consistent styles, but some of them, as you see, work in different media. Three-dimensional and two-dimensional, or large drawings and small paintings, or an installation that becomes a painting, that kind of thing. There's a lot of shape-shifting going on in this work in general. That's not simply to describe the exhibition, but to describe the nature of the current tendency. And on that note, I also like to say is that of this kind of space, this kind of artistic neighborhood, especially mature, and there are the development of ideas and images tends in a group like this to be secure and self-aware, which helps put together an exciting show. Maybe one more difficult than putting together an MFA show. And I put together several MFA shows in this space back about 10, 15 years ago when I was teaching at Laguna College of Art and Design. They had their MFA shows here, and I was asked to be curator a couple of times. That was a lot of fun. And in fact, I would have to say that the LCAT MFA candidates were remarkably mature artists in and of themselves. They really know how, they not only know how to teach there, they know how to select their applicants.
And on that note of like almost everyone that's in here is a mature artist.
Yeah.
I would say what, 99.9% of them, maybe one is an emerging artist, but
One or
most of
two,
them,
yeah.
one or two. Of that, when you were choosing the work and you were looking through the studios, and now that you see it all hanging, did you find that there's maybe a specific cultural landscape, something that's happening amongst all of the work besides the aesthetic. If you notice that, because I picked out my own little vibe that's happening here, but I'm curious what your thought process was on that.
I was looking for that, but I was also looking to make sure that my own tastes at the moment were not pushing me towards something. Given the state of the world,
Right.
I wanted that helicopter. But I didn't want but that sufficed. You know, you make a point and then you go on to the next point. So I wanted the interests of each artist to be available in the display of their work. And if the audience comes in and sees connections between the work of various artists, all the better. There are several groups of artists with a certain aesthetic and extra aesthetic interests. For instance, there are a number of artists of Persian background who are, most of whom are drawing on Persian visual culture and doing it exquisitely. So that is an aesthetic that you keep coming. If you come to an open house in the studios, you kind of get a sense of that yourself. Whereas the group show exposes that aesthetic within an overall aesthetic that's, for lack of a better word, multicultural. But that's the kind of exhibition I feel we need these days.
Absolutely.
Something that asserts cultural identity and affirms the cooperation of cultural identities. You know, the worse things get, the more I feel dedicated to the harmony of voices.
Which I think this show is really successful in doing. I think that you chose works that reveal the kind of private nature of the artist's practice, but also found the connections between one artist to the next in speaking to like a larger overall statement.
I could barely avoid it under the circumstances.
Yeah.
You know, most group shows, most things I'm invited to curate, I'm invited to select the artist, and the artists are scattered all over the LA basin. Here, again, all under one roof, so I could go from door to door. You know, more like trick-or-treating than gallery going.
And I think on that note, like all of you, he came to your studio, and we should probably talk about what it is that a curator is expecting when they do a studio visit, right? I think that's really important, and it's also part of the class on Thursday too. So this is to get Peter to tell you his secrets about what his expectations are when he comes to visit your studio is very helpful.
Exactly. And, by the way, just to make clear, I did not jury this show. Jurying is another process altogether.
Oh yeah, totally different.
The juror is passive. The curator is active. And the artist is passive aggressive.
So tell them what you're thinking about when you get invited to curate a show and you're going, and specifically for this one, everyone is under one roof. But like if you were going their studio, a separate studio visit, and you have been invited to come look at the work, what is the expectation on your end, and can you communicate to the artist how they should prepare for that?
No, I can't advise how to prepare for that. If you want me to look, if you want me to see it, put it up. And by putting it out, I don't mean making it nice hanging on the wall necessarily. If just put the stack in front. It's common sense. But unless your studio looks like Francis Bacon's, you should be as presentable as you would another artist sticking his or her head in the door. You don't have to go to the length of an open studio.
Right.
Just, in fact, most curators want to be among the dynamic of the active studio.
Right. They want to experience their practice.
Yeah.
I want to see what your practice is like when I'm not here. What's your thought process in making the work, and like when you go from having inspirational images on the wall to where the work is being sketched out to where the work is actually being made. Those are all those steps in your practice are so important. And I know we're similar when it comes to that. Like if I'm curating something and I go visit a studio, I want to see your mindset. Like I want to get in your head and be able to think about when I'm looking at the work, what you're thinking about when you're making the work. And it's hard to do that if you clean up your studio and make it pristine like an open studios.
It's okay if you are presenting that for another reason as well. It's not like we want to come in there and necessarily step in painting up to our ankles.
Yeah.
But don't think you have to clean up your act for our visit.
Right.
We know too much about art. And we think we know too much about artists.
And then another piece of advice I would give you all is if Peter comes to your studio, talk about your process. He's looking, but he's not going to know in his mind why you make what you make. That's the function of your artist statement, and in this case, he's looking at the work. So instead of telling him what he's looking at, because he's a sophisticated eye, he knows what he's looking at. Tell him why that you made the work,
Yeah.
or the ideas around what informed the decision to make a specific object or to craft certain types of imagery in the work.
Exactly. I was having a discussion with a friend the other day, and we were thinking the question isn't what is art, it's why is art. And that begins with what the artist has made. Why has the artist made this? Whether it's on the face-to-face level, whether in a visit that I made to your studio, or standing there in front of Matisse's red studio in MoMA. Why did Matisse paint this in 1911? And if you want to have some fun, then why did you go drain all color out and go on the 1914 blah blah blah? But you can do the same. You can have the same experience with the curator in your studio. As a matter of fact, one of the nicest aspects of going door to door was having what I found to be a different discussion each place. I think I was given 45 minutes, depended on the day, but half an hour to an hour, 45 minutes average to look at the work and select, make my initial selections. Everybody I visited, I had a conversation about something else. It was either something in the work, something behind the work, something about the artist's own life experience, right down to what the artist likes to eat and what and how to prepare.
And it should be that, because all of you as artists, your stories are different, and the work that you're making is a reflection of the landscape that you're working in, your backstory of where you come from. All of that is unique, and so I would be really disappointed if Peter said, "Yeah, I went to each space and everyone said the same thing." Like that would be scary.
Well, that sounds like a bunch of calories.
Right. Right. How to sell work.
Exactly. Well, what's the joke? how many galleries does it take to screw in a light bulb? 18. One to screw it in, and 17 to keep screwing it in because it worked the first time.
Ouch.
But anyway, I feel this is I'm very satisfied with this show. I've been able to look at it outside myself and found that with maybe a little hung tightly here and there, but everything shines, everything sings. I'm satisfied that every piece I chose was the right piece to choose from that artist.
And the placement of it.
The placement of it.
Yeah.
Well, there were a lot of hands involved in the placement of it, so I won't take full credit for that. But I was thinking about that placement when I was selecting it. I was going back and forth. I wanted as much equality in terms of running feet as possible. So people who work larger, I gave maybe one piece, I selected one large work, a wall installation or a large painting. People who work smaller, I picked groups of work, maybe up to 8 panels or something like that, and made little experiences of those in this, especially in this corridor room that I'm especially fond of because it's so hard. That's where the installation really gets tough. But I'm saying that from past experience because this experience, it was the easiest. You just, what do we do with all this little work? Boom. Okay, now we're in here. Where do we do this? Where do we do that? That room was a lot of fun. This room was a headache. Which is funny because I thought it would be the opposite, it would be another way around. But we had just a little more than I bargained for.
I don't think it feels tight.
Did I let the cat out of the bag?
No, I don't think it does. You said it earlier, you felt like it was a little bit tight. I feel like, yeah, we have that joke that we always make, like, oh, hung it with a shoehorn.
Right.
And I don't feel that in this show. You still feel like there's separation in between the artists, but then there's these, visual connections between each one.
Mm-hmm.
And they're expertly chosen. And it's not easy to curate when you have so many different styles and genres and mediums and group shows, unless you don't have the barrier of having to choose from one studio, like everybody had to come from this building, and you can go separately all over the country and choose work. It's much easier, right? Because then you come up with this visual thesis and you know exactly what you're looking for, and then you know which artist you're going to go to. But in this case, it's a lot more difficult because you have a limited field, you have it's a limited palette, and you still have to make sure that everything connects with you. Besides the theme of being under one roof, that the work itself, conceptually and visually, has to make a connection.
Although, picking from under one roof, it sounds like it's a hell of a lot easier than curating a show from all over the country. But it's not as much fun. Didn't get to take business class between studios here. But if I didn't get to select the artists, that was all the better because I work on a principle if-then. If such circumstances pertain, then how do we address the circumstances? Then you address the circumstances. If the circumstances of installation have been met, then how do we light, how do we modify, how do we give room enough for these artists not to step on each other's toes, et cetera, et cetera. Always a matter of if then. I mean, any curatorial effort depends on that dynamic, but when you're working in the same building, it becomes much more clearly incisive that the requirements, the bounds, spell themselves out without a compromise, and that actually helps in the decision making. Sometimes, quite often, limitations are the best thing for creating. Stravinsky said that he preferred to be commissioned a piece for 8 instruments, some of which were winds, that lasted no more than 20 minutes and consisted of 3 movements, fast, slow, fast, and the whole thing lasting a quarter hour, I said 18 to 20 minutes. He worked best with all these limitations because he was bouncing off them. Each limitation was a little challenge. Well, each selection here was a little challenge. Not because it was, how do I make this art look better, but how do I make this art look as good as it deserves, alongside everything else. If I take this work out of this studio, then where do I put it? If I put it here, then what will happen to this wall? What will happen to this room? If I solve for those problems, what problems will flow into the next gallery?
Right, and you're not just thinking about the moment when someone stands in front of something, but the moment they walk in the door. What do I see in my periphery? How do, when I turn, what is now in my periphery? But I'm still looking forward, so I'm connecting this piece with those 2 pieces in the back corner.
Right.
Like, and then how do you direct the viewer through the space from going from one to the next without feeling like one is a stopping point, right? You still want to have punctuation and flow, but you also want to drive the viewer through the space visually, and not create points where they're just going to be static. So there's a lot involved in like thinking about this and where everything goes, and I think you having conversations with the artists is very helpful. I find if I'm curating and I'm just looking at things and I don't understand the why around the artist's practice, it's a lot harder to think about what is that best representation of that work. Where is it going to perform the best in the space based on my knowledge of the intentions the artist had around the work?
And I'd like to note that that's a different process than critiquing artwork.
Right.
And writing a review of a show, you're taking the standpoint of the visitor. You're not necessarily committed to the work the way you are as a curator. So you don't, maybe even shouldn't have to consider the why of the work when experiencing it in a gallery show. The experience you ultimately write about is yours, not the artist's. With a curated show, the artist's experience must be considered. It need to drive the show, even if it's a one-person show, but it must pertain. And in fact, a one-person curated show is almost a dialogue between curator and artist as equals. I have a show I curated of work spanning 20 years by Andi Moses down at the Laguna Art Museum, and that was a meeting of minds. And in Andy's case, he felt strongly about certain pieces. I didn't feel, I felt strongly about the way things should be mixed and variegated. He felt strongly about specific pieces. So we worked with the patterns I suggested and the items he suggested. And we agreed from the outset, because we've been dialoguing for years, on the how and the why of the work.
And that brings up a good point. When you're working with a museum curator, it should absolutely be a collaboration. For real, like it should not be the curator says, oh, just show up and bring whatever you want and, lay it out where you want it to be. The person who understands the space the best is the curator, and the person who understands the audience will be that curator. And that, they're helping you to get the work to perform the best it can be based on who's coming into the space and what the space is actually like. It would be easy, it's almost cheating, and I think if anyone calls themselves a curator, especially in a museum, and says, oh, just show up and bring whatever you want and, lay it out the way you want, they're doing you a disservice. Because the idea there is a growth period, right? There's a growth moment, there's an aha chance to say, oh, I learned this about how this works in a space and how people look at it. And if the curator you're working with says, oh, just do whatever you want, ask them, tell them that you want to be collaborative with them.
That's true if you're doing independent curation for that institution.
Right.
If you're depending on these people who work day in and day out with this space, that are, unless they've just been hired themselves, they're familiar with the layout. They're familiar with what problems they have to solve for lighting beforehand, that kind of thing. So, I think a curator has to depend on a home curator to guide her or him through the space that has to be animated. And you have to think about animating space to various degrees, depending on, of course, how difficult the space is as an architectural volume, but also what kind of atmosphere is common to the exhibitions there, what kind of lights they use. Are they using are they using LEDs yet?
Or whether it's daytime or nighttime. Like the space, for instance, has a lot of natural light, and obviously lighting it's going to be different at noon, midday, versus if the reception is at 5 o'clock in December. Like it's going to be remarkably different. So you want, and the person that's going to know that is whoever is working in the space, typically the curator. Or that corner is really hard to light, so we're not going to put dark pieces in that corner because we know that there's a history of not being able to light it properly. Or this corner does better with, the height because there isn't that back wall, it's all open, or it's, all of those things around the space that you wouldn't think about, and the technical stuff around the space. There's a door jamb in this one spot, or we have an electrical box that's somewhere on the wall. All of those things are going to dictate how your work performs in that space, and that's the best person to help you connect it. I had another thought about that, and it completely just went out of my head. Sorry.
I wish you didn't get into my head. At a certain point, curators develop this kind of telepathy.
Right.
But that's okay, they both like your work.
That's true, right?
Well, that's how we worked at Riverside.
Yeah.
That was too much fun to be, John.
I know, that was a great job.
It was a phenomenal job. We had the opportunity to do a lot of experimentation and a lot of just off the wall stuff.
That no museum would want to do because, well, I think since the pandemic, a lot has changed for museums. But, back in 2005, what we were proposing, people were like, what? You want to do what? And then it was very successful, and then everybody wanted to do that. I think, and I'm going to bring this up only because it just still pisses me off. In 2004, we started working on this show that encompassed all of the abstraction in Los Angeles from around 1945-ish to the 80s. And it had never been discussed. There was no academic writing on it. There was no critical writing on the genre. And we got together, both of us have a tendency to gravitate towards abstraction. And we thought, gosh, we should really put this together. Nothing's ever been done. So we started thinking about it, and we curated this incredible show with all these incredible historic people who no one had ever heard of up until that moment, many of them. And then we thought, well, this is really great. Why don't we invite other organizations to also have a show that's similar, so the commercial galleries could take their abstract painters or abstract artists, and then we would have this giant show that encompassed 12 institutions, and we were all focused on the same thing. Well, we took our idea to the Getty, and they said, we're not ready to do that. And then 5 years later, they came up with PST, which is basically our concept. By the way, we did do it, and we had 10 institutions all at one time showing Los Angeles abstraction, and it was fabulous. There was a book produced, which I meant to bring today, and I completely forgot. But it was the first time that Los Angeles painters actually were being taken seriously, because we were in that moment of like, oh, painting's dead, and even the graduate schools were like, oh, we don't want to talk about painting. But it reinvigorated this interest back into painting, and of course we were told, oh, you can't do that, and you can't have commercial galleries have openings that have shows that celebrate the, why not? So we did it, and now it's actually like a template for a lot of organizations on how to partner and collaborate. So, but yeah, we did some things that everyone was like, what? That was one of them.
I know. We kicked ass. But they didn't figure out which button until much later.
Right. And I wanted to go back to the art critic part of this kind of talking, because you wear multiple hats. I don't do as much, definitely don't do as much writing as you do. I wear multiple hats. I know, just put it sideways. There we go. So we're talking the art critic and Peter now. And I know you mentioned briefly about how you think about it differently than when you're curating, but I think if you can go into more detail on the writing about the work and how important that is, because I think a lot of artists don't understand that the contextualization of your work can't just come from you. It needs to come from someone who has a history and an understanding of the larger picture about the art being made. And I speak to that, because I think that's really important.
Well, even if you make art, if you write about art, you're serving an overlapping public, but you're serving that public in a different way than you are as a curator, than you are as an artist. If you're writing criticism, you're looking not only at the work, the artwork itself, if you're reviewing an exhibition, or talking about several exhibitions whose combined meanings add up to some larger statement. That's what a critic's job is, to find contextualization for your work by finding it in the work. A lot of critics get criticized themselves for having an idea about the work before they've seen it. Although that's not as big a problem now as it was in the 70s, 80s, when criticism was taken over by an academic impulse. That impulse has yielded to other impulses, which may or may not be as baleful, but at least people who write about art and art shows and art events and art phenomena are encouraged to write about what's there rather than what should be there. The problem is getting them to write about what's there and saying something about what's there as well. When I edit other people's criticism, I find that writing about editing lists of works is the least interesting aspect of the critical writing.
And good writing, in my experience, has been when a writer doesn't bring their own bullshit to the review.
But does bring her own supported, educated point of view.
Yes.
And a writing style. It's very important to stress. Writing about art is writing. If it's not good writing, it's not good writing about art.
That's right. And you hope and then of course there's also a difference between critical writing about your work and a review. Those are also two separate things.
Exactly.
So a review being in a publication of someone kind of regurgitating the show that they saw. Often we read lately, or at least in the last 20 years, art, what they call a review or criticism, typically is someone just writing a list of what they looked at and the names and what the colors are in the painting, but they're not really telling us like why this is important or why it is not important. They're just giving us a like
or what it's about,
right? Or what it's about. It's just a visual synopsis. But a good review, whether it's positive or negative around the work, would be giving us some kind of context of what we could expect this work, where it would fit into art history, what were the strong concepts within the work themselves, not just a regurgitation of this is the title, these were the colors, it was done in oil paint. And anyone that just comes out and just says, oh, well, this is a great show, but then doesn't give you a reason why it would be great is also bad writing. The critical writing on the other side of that you all should have of your work by someone who's notable, like Peter, or other writers in Los Angeles, there's quite a few, are where they take the work and contextualize it historically, and that writing doesn't say whether it's good or bad, it's telling you where this fits and why it fits. There's not a judgment on if this is good or bad. I think some critical writers might say that, but good writing doesn't need to say that because they're gonna explain in that critical piece what's important about it. But you could elaborate on that because I'm blowing this out.
Yeah, I mean, if you're writing, for instance, an essay for someone's catalog or book, it's understood that you're going to be supportive. That you're writing from a position of comprehension of the artist's, not just the artist's work itself, but the impulses that led the artist to make the work and say with the work what the artist wants to say. As an essayist, it's not up to me to say it for the artist, or even to accept 100% what the artist says about it, but to work with what the artist is saying about it and what the artist is making, first and foremost, to come to my own conclusions, my own extrapolations. The essay is more a work of literature than the review is. And as a result should even be better written than the review.
Agreed. And you should pay attention to those critical pieces too, because often the writer will be so perceptive around the work, some things that you didn't even think about in your own work. Because you're bringing your own story and your own experiences to making it, and he's coming from a different point of view and looking and realizing, oh, this connects to, and might be an artist you never even thought about. For instance, like the use of the paint itself in the process could be similar to another artist that also pushed the medium a certain way. And that, we don't think about those things when we make the work, but someone like Peter or another critic or even curators can write about that and put that into contextualizing it within an art historical overall, and that's what makes it important in that moment, right? Like he said, this is good or this is important because, and gives us a reason, not just because he likes the colors or the mark making.
Right. And there may be associations I make with the work that are entirely independent of the artist's reason for making the work, but that's one of the things I'm being hired for. To create a kind of conceptual bridge between artist and audience, to speak as a member of the audience who happens to be articulate about the process and the thing itself in the object, the process, and the inner dialogue between artist, the triangulation between artist, artwork, and audience. 3 A's.
And a well-written piece will create entry points for a broader audience than one that's not. So if you have something that's so academic that only other academics can understand, like that doesn't have value for you. That is not creating a larger audience for yourself or interest in the work outside of the half a dozen academic critics that are in Los Angeles. Like that's a really small audience. Something to think about. Does anybody have any questions? Is there anything that you wanted to talk about?
No, I think I was thinking to myself, wouldn't this be a great point
to ask questions? Yeah. Does anybody have any questions? Go ahead.
The title, Under One Roof, is very metaphorical as well as literal, especially given the time frame we're living in and the diversity of the artists. So my question is, who came up with the title and was it intended to be metaphorical?
Me, yes.
Well, bravo. I think it's a great title.
You know what? So do I.
Any other questions?
It seemed like the only title possible. Yes.
Yeah, I mean, I just think with a group show like this, there's so many things that you're going to be dealing with. I mean, was there anything that surprised you once you saw it all come together?
Well, all coming together surprised me, as it does with every show. Someone asked me, what do you look for in doing a show? It's the moment the show reveals itself to me. You know, that the work is starting to assemble in the space it's going to be displayed. We're moving it around, we're arranging and rearranging it, playing a little with the lights, playing a lot with the hammers and the ladders, and all of a sudden, I go walking through, maybe looking for a cup of tea or needing to talk to somebody, and I stop for a moment and look around and say, that's it. Aha. You know, it's a magic moment.
The best part of curating is that moment.
Exactly. You realize you've done everything from express your ideas about art to earn your keep.
It's like create a piece of art, so maybe as an artist, it's the same.
Yes.
I mean,
There are definite parallels.
Because you have an idea and suddenly say, wow, that's
Exactly.
it, right? After maybe mistake or make arrangement of material.
Right. I don't want to call curating or critical writing as the same thing as making art. It's like remaking art. It's a creative act, but it's in support of another purer creative act, more purely creative act.
You had a question?
Yes. Did you choose the work or the works with the idea if the work is the best work of the artist, or choose the work in terms of matching other artists' work?
You mean who's been placed next to whom?
No. I'm asking you when you chose the works from an artist. Did you choose the best work of the artist, or you were thinking of matching work of this artist to the others?
Somewhere in between, closer to the best work of the artist. But if the best work of the artist was big, too big, awkward. If it was work that the artist had already shown, maybe here, maybe elsewhere in town, I gave it less favor and wanted to bring out things that certainly this potential audience here in the studio building would not have necessarily have seen before. I was looking for a fresh experience, made fresh, and the making fresh was as much through the selection, one next to one, as one in and of itself.
And I think also using the term best work of the artist, like, I think it would depend on whatever the outcome is, right? Like, the best work for this show was for it to be cohesive and to be able to communicate with another artist, not necessarily or putting 3 of their largest pieces. And Peter's right, like, what is the outcome that we're looking for in the space?
Yeah.
So not necessarily the best piece. The
No,
best piece would be what fits
from
that, not the best work of yours. And it's not really for him to judge what is the best of your work, right? Like
No,
that.
I meant from his point of view, the best work from
What's
his
the best
point.
work?
Oh, yeah.
What do I feel is the best
That's
work?
right. Whatever serves the
Well, yeah,
purpose of
I'm
the show.
less concerned with comparative quality than I am with the conveyance of idea and image, and the artist's relationship to message, material, and movement. Couldn't think of anything else that began with N. Yes.
This is in regard to your process. I remember we had an initial studio visit and we talked, and then shortly after, I don't know, a week or 2 later, there was a second visit, and I'm curious,
It was a
what
month
happened during that time, and is that how you work, or is this, something to share?
Thank you. I was going to mention that I went back from. It was actually a month. There was a month gap between studio visits. I went by design. I went back for a second visit to see if the selections I'd made in the first visit held together, and I was better able to conceptualize the installation of those various works in the gallery. The first time I didn't have the presence of mind. I was focused
Right.
on what was going to come out of this studio and that studio, etc. This time I was able to focus. That second time I was able to focus on where the stuff was going to go once it went out the door.
Did it change? I mean, your second time, or
Yes.
did it depend on the?
I mean, it didn't change for every single artist, but I'd say it did change even a little bit for about half the artists.
Cool.
So,
Thank you.
yes.
Where do you see, this is another topic, Where do you see like the burgeoning art areas geographically in Southern California? Because, you know, I drive everywhere every weekend with my art gang to see to galleries, and it's quite a bit of driving. And this is a fantastic studio, but where do you see as the burgeoning art?
Well, Melrose Hill is the newest one, and given its formation and location, running north-south and being just west of downtown, it's about halfway between downtown and Hollywood.
But what about like a San Pedro or you know?
Those are good for artists, but not so good for exhibition spaces.
So if galleries cluster together, it's going to have more of a buzz, like the David's Warner Beachhead on Melrose Hill brought the other galleries.
Exactly, you know, which replicates the history of West Chelsea.
Right. But like the Mid-Wilshire area, like what will happen? You know, it'll all be.
It's very fluid.
It has been for 50 years. I mean, I'm born and raised here, and I've watched it over the last 40 years just migrate all over the city, depending on real estate values, depending on, I mean, you know, artists bring and elevate real estate. I mean, it's a proven thing. You bring arts and culture into a neighborhood, and so typically galleries and artists gravitate towards realistic and affordable real estate, cheap studio space. And then all of a sudden, you know, you have this kind of vibrant, living community, and then that raises and elevates the real estate value, and then it changes, and then, you know, the rates go up, and the leases go up, and then everyone moves to the next kind of spot that needs to be
we've seen that, you know, in New York. But in New York, you're up against geographic limitations, and now economic limitations as well. But it's one thing to move out to San Pedro or Claremont. It's another thing to move out to Bushwick or Long Island City.
Right.
You know, because as soon as you do that, the bastards are on your ass.
No, it's not. I mean, real estate values.
Exactly. That process takes longer here. It used to take so long that you didn't account for it. You know, because if a studio space in Culver City was going for a particular sum in 1995, it was likely to be 10% as of 2005. But now it's doubled.
Some galleries seem to be destination galleries, like you and I saw each other last night at the Mark Selwyn Gallery, right? That's like in the middle of, you know, it's like Santa Monica Boulevard, you know. He's mixed in with retail, you know, so.
Exactly. Well, there's always been a lively, funky, unpredictable quality to galleries here as well as to artists, and that's one reason I moved here. No, actually, it's two reasons I moved here. I moved here because of that LA has that, and I moved here because New York doesn't.
Right. Yeah. Thank you.
Yes.
I'm glad you brought up the idea of finance, and because it occurs to me that there's another kind of cohesive aspect to this show, which is that every artist in the show is able to afford the studios here, which are lovely, whether they're selling work or financially capable in some other way. So I just wanted to throw that little comment in. And I have a question for both of you, actually. Have you ever had to curate a show where you really did not like the work at all? How did you handle it?
Yes, and I bowed out. I'm not going to put my name or get involved in something that I don't believe in. And anybody who knows me here knows how passionate I am about what I do, and if I don't believe in it, I'm not going to promote it. I don't want to be a part of it. Sorry, that was my answer. Go ahead.
I don't get that far.
I
actually follow this, I agree with Andy. And you create something amazing because you don't have choice. You didn't have a choice. You have to create the show with all
I had to show
here.
these 30
And-
artists.
I mean, you create a magic for something that Andy said, maybe you didn't like
Well, yeah.
our work, right?
Right.
But because we are under one roof, let's choose
Understandably,
a title.
But this work that's
I mean-
here is all very good.
But
Like,
you
I
know-
wouldn't say no to this.
No,
Yeah.
but he did a magic to put together and create one piece. I mean, one, it can be very well together. We're all different here.
Yeah.
No, we have no, we
Right.
don't do the same
But that's
thing.
the secret, that's
but
the secret
he-
sauce of a curator. Like,
Yeah,
that's
but-
their
I
thing.
mean, we create from that difference the unity. That's the
when
magic.
Cars LA hired me to do this show, they asked me what the theme of the show was going to be. I said, it's already there. We, under one roof.
The roof can leak, huh? Okay, now I fix it.
Oh yeah, I hadn't thought of that. Fortunately, one of the criteria we did not use as one of the criteria for hanging the show what part leaks.
And also, I think, having heard about this show for a long time, each time that Peter went from studio to studio, he wanted more. And that's what he really wanted to share, finding those treasures in each one of your studios and making the audience want more and to make you want more.
Tell you what, now I know the work of almost all of you, and were I to have the opportunity to do a thematic show where I had to select the artists, I would definitely come by here again, looking at least for certain people who I felt fit that theme.
And those of you who are taking class on Thursday, what's my advice after the show is over? Follow up, right? Like, follow up with him. Keep on his radar. Tell him, send him your newsletter. Invite him to events. Keep the relationship going. This was a door opening for you, and now to keep Peter in your, apprised of what you're doing in your practice.
I mean, I knew a lot of you beforehand, but afterhand, I now know all of you.
I want to add here that for me, one of the most exciting times during all this process. Yes, your visits were so nice, but we were so excited to actually be in these rooms together because we never been. We haven't been, right? This is the first. And then it was by you, right, as a curator. But so I was excited about the art I was making, the show that is coming. But what I loved the most was your excitement when you went, at least in my room, but I think everyone, or a lot of you, will mirror this, is your excitement about seeing things, and your head was going and looking excited about the current stuff, the newest, what you haven't seen, for those that you already knew. Or so all that excitement, I think, added, to the process of the ones that will be in this room together.
That's true. I didn't expect to go through the studios with such brio, but I was having such a good time. Great conversation, great art, a lot of which I'd never seen before, and the project itself seems so logical yet surprising. That the name of the show almost came first. Under one roof. It's like when I write, I start with the title for an essay. I'll write the essay and then go back to the title and see if it still pertains. And if it does, I'm pretty much finished, except for tweaking my semicolons.
You have a question, Zach?
Yeah.
Yeah, I really appreciated your writing. Made me see us and our did contextualize it. Writing's great. And so I wondered too, also, I was surprised at how much coverage we got, and I attribute it to you as well. I think your curating it caused more interest as well. And I wondered if there's these informal conversations you're having with arts journalists, or like, I wondered about the write-ups we were getting, and if you were involved at all with those.
I don't know what's planned, but you're right. There is room for exactly that kind of ongoing discussion. You know, maintaining an active discourse, not just signaling one another the openings, but sitting down and having. Well, there's been an ongoing series in New York called Artists Talk on Art, which has been going on, I think, since the early mid-'70s. I think it was certainly the first ongoing discussion in Soho. But I remember chairing a panel about pattern painting in February of 1975. And a couple of years ago, they contacted me again for some sort of Zoom conference. So they can do it, why can't we?
Let's do it.
Talk to Maddie. I think she can be more specific about like what the press looked like and how and where it went. Yeah, she could probably answer that.
Yeah.
And you have to go, right? Is it time?
Yeah.